Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer55551, and I am back with a video. And for this one, we're going to be taking a look at gaming in 2020, though. Looking back at the good, the controversial, and the mix, and of course, the bad. So 2020, well, let's just say 2020 was a very odd year for a lot of things, particularly one of the big reasons, though, aka COVID-19 and all that stuff. But we certainly saw some things that definitely turned out well for a lot of folks. Some of it turned out to be a bit controversial or mixed, though, and there were certainly some bad things as well, though. So we're going to break this up into three parts, like I said: good, controversial, mix, and the bad. So we'll start off first with the good, and we'll start with the first one, which is the Sonic movie, though. It was definitely a good year for that movie, though. When that movie was announced, though, I didn't really have a lot of high hopes, considering that movies based on video games don't necessarily do well. And when the first trailer was shown, the way Sonic was designed, yeah, I mean, normally I take the fandom with a grain of salt, because there are times when I think the fandom goes a little bit too overboard, as we've seen with several different fandoms, though. But then there are some cases where I do kind of have to side with them. And in the case with Sonic's design, yeah, not to mention when you have fan art that can do a better job than these multi-million-dollar animation studios, that should tell you something. But interesting enough, Paramount Pictures was willing to delay that movie to basically give it the time necessary to redesign Sonic and all. And eventually it paid off, though. And the movie turned out to be good. I mean, it's not great. It's not anything spectacular, but it was good. It felt like effort was put into this. It didn't feel like take a popular license and just try to come up with something and call it a day or anything. It's like they actually put effort into this movie, though. And given how well it did, and not to mention Jim Carrey's portrayal of Dr. Robotnik, or Eggman, though, was also very good as well. It kind of felt like I was watching his expression of Dr. Eggman kind of felt like a little bit of Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, and all. So certainly the Sonic movie doing well at the box office was definitely a good thing for Paramount and Sega. I'm looking forward to the sequel, though. At the same time, that kind of puts the expectation high for them. They set the bar with the first one. They're really going to have to try hard to basically overtake the first one, all that stuff. But still, good for the movie, did very well. Also for good this year was also Animal Crossing New Horizon, if I'm saying the name correctly, though. And while I'll admit I'm not really a big Animal Crossing fan, there's no denying the game has been a huge success on the Nintendo Switch. The fact that a lot of people use it for especially the whole interactive and social aspects, especially during COVID-19, which certainly that game definitely helped people, especially during, at least way I see it from COVID-19, from those doing like a class to a wedding. I mean, I've even seen people who put up like, and political or not, put up like Joe Biden signs and all that stuff. I mean, it just amazes how well this game actually did very well. And it kind of looks at, I look at other games as well. I mean, look at Luigi's Mansion. That was a niche title, and look how well that did on the Nintendo Switch, though. So it's very amazing to see how well Animal Crossing is doing. Along with Paper Mario, the Origami King, that also did very well. Good game to be exact. And Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition as well. But and those games also did good, and I'm glad those games did well. But Animal Crossing really definitely did extraordinarily well for Nintendo. It was certainly also a good year for Sony, especially with Ghost of Tsushima, though. The long-awaited game that Sucker Punch was working on, and it was definitely worth the wait, though. The style and everything about it, including their open-world approach, was really a unique kind of experience for the game, and a great way to sort of send a final send-off to the PS4. I played the game. I definitely like it, though. Some things I'm not a big fan of, though. Like, I personally would have liked to see a mini-map in it, but for the majority of the time, the game was good and all that stuff, especially the authentic look to, like, Japanese lore and so forth, though. It definitely, given how well that game has done, It's nice to see, well, I shall say, it's nice to see finding the same success similar to with Guerrilla Games. It went from doing Killzone to the Horizon Zero Dawn, how that well it did. And anyway, given how well Ghost of Tsushima did, it wouldn't surprise me if we see a sequel perhaps make its way onto the PS5. Although I certainly would be open for them, Sucker Punch, for doing another Sly Cooper or Infamous game, though. I'm definitely down with a sequel to Ghost of Tsushima if that does happen, which I believe with God of War, I believe that odds are it's more than likely we will probably see a sequel during the PS5 era. We also saw what was good was also for the Nintendo Switch, though, which definitely did pretty well, even though finding the Switch, though, was kind of difficult, although I've seen some Switch Lites and so forth. But that system continued to do well, especially with the software that it got put out and everything like that. Even during the holidays, it did very well, despite the launch of the PS5 and the Xbox Series S, though. Although it's going to be interesting to see how well that system is going to compete, or how well it will stack up for 2021, especially with the PS5 and Xbox Series now out and all that stuff. But Nintendo's still continuing to do very well with the Nintendo Switch. We'll see if they continue. We'll see if those rumors about a Switch Pro or a revision of the Switch, if that turns out to be true or not. But either way, right now, with I think about 68 million units sold worldwide, and possibly even higher, though, it's obviously the Switch isn't going anywhere anytime soon. It was also a good year for both the Xbox Series S and X, and even the PS5, though I will get to the bad part of that about that. But I will say, obviously, both those companies must be pretty happy with the way both of those systems have sold very well and all that, and I'm sure they're happy with the games and all that. So Sony and Microsoft must be pretty happy, especially Microsoft, especially with this system, along with Xbox Game Pass and all that stuff. I mean, I'm happy with the Xbox Series S, though. It's a good system, even though it's a digital system. It's still an enjoyable system, nevertheless, and all that stuff. And I'm sure people are enjoying using their PS5 and all, as we've heard reports of how well those are. Supposedly, they're going to push production for more in 2021. Hopefully, that will be enough to be able to find one, even though it's like very difficult to find a PS5 in time and during the holidays and all that stuff. But obviously, Microsoft and Sony must be happy with with the sales numbers so far. And last but not least, though, some people may agree or disagree with me in this, and I kind of put this at the tail end for being good, and that is Stadia in 2020. What people thought, like, this was going to join the Google graveyard as other Google products, though, and we will see if that eventually happens or not. It seems that Stadia in 2020, at least, did better than they did when it originally launched. When the service launched, though, it got off to a really bad start. Not a lot of features were ready and all that, and excuse me, only had basically the Founders Edition, as the free version didn't roll out until, like, I believe around February, once they put the free tier version out. But we started to see more and more features start to come out for Google Stadia, including crowd sharing and all. And we started to see more and more games, including some exclusives like Serious Sam 4 come to Google Stadia, though. But I think the big one for Stadia that I think might have helped it in a way, though, was the situation with Cyberpunk 2077. That, I think, may have helped Stadia a lot, given the current situation Cyberpunk 2077 is facing, for really four main reasons, though. One, the PS4 and Xbox One versions supposedly are broken at this time. Supposedly CD Projekt Red is trying to fix it, but we'll see if they do. Two, although it supposedly runs well on the PS5 or Xbox Series X and S, unfortunately at this time, though, it's very hard to find a PS5 and an Xbox Series S and X, especially for those who may have been lucky to find one and all. So right now, not a lot of people have an option to play it on a PS5 or Xbox Series S and X, though. Let's see, that's one. That's 2. 3, we know that supposedly a PS5 and Xbox Series S and X version are going to happen, but we don't know when it will happen. And given the whole mess the PS4 and Xbox One version it has, though, we don't know how long we may have to wait. They're saying sometime 2021, but it's too early to tell if that is too early to tell when it will come out. And 4, although supposedly the PC version is the way to go, despite reports of some bugs, and even though I'm not a PC gamer, I know there are those who I have nothing against PC gaming. I know those who like the idea of PC gaming, and you know what? If you know how to set up a proper PC, if you're willing to spend money to build a proper PC to play something like Cyberpunk 2077, hey, knock yourself out. If that's something that works for you, that works for you, and I don't have any issue with that and all. That said, though, it is worth pointing out, not everybody, me for example, knows how to set up a PC or anything like that, nor do some people were willing to spend the money to build a proper PC. So, given the current situation, the only options were basically, playing Cyberpunk 2077 on Stadia if you weren't taking the PC route or through NVIDIA GeForce Nows. But to me, this turned out to be most likely the perfect storm for Google Stadia with Cyberpunk 2077. And I think it may have, to some extent, it's possible this may have helped Stadia more than it should have, though. But we'll see how 2021 plays out for Google. Hopefully this time around, they've learned their lesson from the launch, and supposedly they're taking an approach of, we're not going to announce, like features or anything until we are 100% certain that we are ready to go, which, if that's true, hopefully Google can get a way to get Stadia back on track, though. I like Stadia. I think there's potential in it, but I still think there are some areas that Google can do to improve Google Stadia, though. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to part 2, and this is the controversial and mixed. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, we are back with part 2 of our look back at gaming in 2020, though, and for part 2, we're going to be taking a look at the controversial / mix stories that, kind of are good, but kind of bad at the same time, though, and it certainly has put an impact on gaming in 2020, though, but which has certainly, shall we say, divided some people. Let's be clear about that, though. We'll start off with the first one, and this one is Cyberpunk 2077. Now, I should put this in the bad category and all that stuff, and there are some, I would say, to some degree, yes, considering how the game was launched, though, in a very poor state, especially the PS4 and Xbox One version, to the fact that CD Projekt Red misled and lied to consumers about it, especially with the whole issue of crunch, to basically the fact that they never showed the PS4 and Xbox One version, though. And that certainly is a very controversial and very bad thing, though. But the one bright spot, at least the one kind of bright spot with Cyberpunk 2077, was that at the very least it looked like there was push to get refunds from this game. From this game. For those who may have been disappointed, though, Sony started to give refunds and pull the game off of their digital storefront. Microsoft didn't, but they are willing to give refunds and all that stuff. On top of that, it seems as though the version of Cyberpunk 2077, depending on what system you own, basically it seems to run best on either, or run better, shall we say, on either the PS5, the Xbox Series X or S, the PC version, depending on if you're willing to spend the money for the parts, or if you have the parts necessary to run it, and Google Stadia. So apparently there were ways, it was possible to play Cyberpunk 2077 and enjoy it, though, but again, not everyone has, a PS5 or Xbox Series S or X at this time, nor does everyone like the game on PC or have knowledge on how to set up a PC properly, though. So there were people who played it and enjoyed it, but there's no doubt the biggest controversy was the way CD Projekt Red handled Cyberpunk 2077 and how that was basically how that was handled and all that stuff, though. We'll see how 2021 turns out. Maybe they actually fix the PS4 or Xbox One version. Maybe not, though. I mean, is it possible the game could make a comeback like Final Fantasy XIV or No Man's Sky did? It's certainly not out of the realm of possibility, but CD Projekt Red has a lot of work to do to really put it in that kind of situation with it. So Cyberpunk 2077 definitely, in my view, goes into the controversial and mixed category. The next one is basically Halo Infinite. Now, no doubt that Halo is one of Microsoft's biggest franchises and all, and it was certainly set to be one of their launch titles for the Xbox Series S and X. Unfortunately, though, it seems as though this game apparently got delayed, and this one had to do with following the first reveal or the 8-minute trailer that showed a game that, well, looked like, visually speaking, it didn't live up to what people had hoped for. Some people even made fun of one of the character designs and so forth. This prompted Microsoft to make a painful decision, I believe in August, to delay the game from its original launch lineup, though, despite having everything all set up to promote the Xbox Series S and X, with Halo Infinite being their launch title, much like how Nintendo had Breath of the Wild as their big launch title now. And while the delay is certainly disappointing and unfortunate, though, following the fallout for Cyberpunk 2077, though, it may have been the right decision to do, to give the developers 343 Industry time to basically fix whatever issues that were there and try to get the game back up and running or get it into a state that Halo fans or Xbox Series S and X owners will love to play once that comes out in fall 2021, barring any major delay. And while the game is still planned for the Xbox One and all, I wouldn't be surprised if Microsoft decides to quietly cancel it, though. Will that happen? Who knows? But obviously, Halo Infinite's delay, certainly not. Some people are disappointed, but some people are kind of pleased with this decision following the fallout from Cyberpunk 2077. And I do hope 343 Industry is able to deliver with Halo Infinite, though, because from what I've seen so far, their handling of Halo has been, well, mixed at best. Master Chief Collection wasn't exactly perfect when it's launched, though, although it's definitely better than, though supposedly it's definitely better than when it originally came out. Halo 5, Guardian didn't exactly sit well with everybody, to be exact. So their handling of the Halo franchise has been mixed at best. Hopefully by sometime probably by fall of this year, though, barring any major delays or anything like that, they can truly have Halo Infinite be a good game for those who purchase an Xbox Series S and X and all. And last but not least, though, the controversy, at least on Sony's side of it, was The Last of Us Part 2. This was basically a highly anticipated game for a lot of folks, but leaks started to come out of exactly some of the plot and some of the story, and not everybody was exactly happy about it at all. Some people did not like the direction Naughty Dog was going with The Last of Us Part 2, and of course there were some that were pulling out the SJW card and so forth. And despite all that, despite some of the controversy that some people had with the game, though, it wasn't enough to stop it from being supposedly sales-wise doing good and winning several awards, including the Game of the Year awards, although some people claim the Game of the Year awards is dead and all that stuff, which you could debate whether that's true or not, though. But there's no doubt that The Last of Us Part 2 is certainly very controversial for this game to come out, though. I haven't played it yet, so I really don't know whether it's truly controversial, as some people make it sound like it is, or it isn't, or anything like that. But there's no doubt The Last of Us Part 2 has certainly left its mark in 2020 in a controversial / mixed way. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll get to part 3, which is the bad. So we'll take a little break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with our third and final part of our look back in gaming in 2020. So now that we're now going to get to the bad, stories that I think, unfortunately, were not. Some of it didn't help in any way. It's for some businesses and all, and other cases that basically the way they handled it was just a god awful and terrible approach to a lot of things, too. Some cases where it was a hard time finding a lot of the next gen consoles that definitely came out. The first one is pretty obviously, and that's CD Projekt Red. Talk about ruining your reputation extremely early. The way they handled Cyberpunk 2077 was just awful and all that stuff. And this mostly had to do with the PS4 and Xbox One version. The fact that they never showed that version at all, only the PC, which led to a situation of them being accused of misleading with consumers and all that stuff, to basically reports that their investors are suing them for how Cyberpunk 2077 was handled, to even them pulling a game from their GOG storefront and all that stuff, claiming that they were listening to what gamers had to say, although there have been some people who say that's not necessarily true. Some people had to do with a portrayment of the Chinese president that the reason they pulled the game out was because they wanted this game to sell in China and all that stuff. So, in other words, it almost came off as like with the whole Blitzchung situation. Remember that, the free Hong Kong and all that stuff. And that, well, let's just say that added on with the debacle of CD Projekt of Cyberpunk 2077 did not help CD Projekt Red, and they ruined their reputation like in an instant, given the fact that they've preached about pro-consumers and all that kind of position. Though, I mean, they're going to have to work really hard to earn that reputation back, though, because they lost it very, very easily, and that's not necessarily a good thing, though. So hopefully 2021's better for CD Projekt Red, but there's no denying the fact that they got some work to do and all that stuff. The next thing we want to talk about is gaming during COVID-19. Now, obviously, COVID-19 had an impact on almost every industry out there. Restaurants were impacted by this. Businesses were impacted by this. I mean, a lot of people were impacted. Some had to take the remote work or work from home. Others, had lost their jobs. So, it did have an impact on a lot of industries, and the gaming industry was no exception to this. We saw basically a lot of the games got delayed due to COVID-19, to even a lot of the events like E3 and so forth had to be outright canceled due to the risk of possibly turning their event into a super spreader in terms of spreading the coronavirus and all that stuff. So it certainly had an impact on the industry, though. But on a side note, though, in some ways it may have had an impact it may have been. Well, I don't want to come off saying it was good, completely good though. But a lot of people that had to stay at home, gaming certainly did very well. Particularly, at least this one article, link in the description, from Business Insider, saw a bunch like older people playing more video games than ever, though. So it was sort of an odd situation with gaming in 2020 with the coronavirus, though. It's had an impact. The industry was impacted because of the coronavirus, but it also kind of helped people in a way. I mean, look at Animal Crossing. That's a video game, and look what people were able to interact and socialize, especially during this pandemic with a game like that. So gaming in 2020 was both helpful for people during this whole pandemic, but it also had an impact on the industry as well. Another bad, of course, is Ubisoft, though, and they had a very rough 2020, though. Some of the biggest controversy for them were basically the allegation of behavior and sexual misconduct that was happening at the company, especially with some of the employees, including the former creator of the Rayman series, who retired, but now there are allegations of the conduct and working conditions working under him, to even basically one of their mobile games basically took on like a enemy and all that stuff that kind of resemblance the whole Black Lives Matter that caused a bit of a backlash that forced Ubisoft to kind of apologize for that, though. So let's just say Ubisoft is also known for a lot of controversies for a lot of things, but this one certainly didn't exactly help them as well. Not to mention, Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Breakpoint sold poorly to enough that it impacted games like Immortal Phoenix Rising, formerly known as God Monsters, and Watch Dogs Legions, which were supposed to come out earlier in 2020, but they decided to delay those games to give developers the necessary time to maybe iron out some areas and all that stuff, which in a way that might have been actually been a very good thing and all. But the sexual misconduct and the handling a situation that involved the Black Lives Matter, though, exactly was not really the greatest moment for Ubisoft, to be exact. Not to mention delays as well, especially Far Cry 6 too. The next one in terms of the bad was also with Nintendo. Now, I do want to say, there's no doubt Nintendo had a good 2020 with a lot of the games they came out and all that stuff, but some of their decisions to handle some of the situation, particularly protecting their IPs in a way, to one situation that was kind of beyond their control, though, but still not exactly great for Nintendo. The first one, both of them had to do with the Smash community, though. The first one had to do with the fact that a lot of Smash players had to step down and all after it was reported of sexual misconduct being committed by some of the players, and that certainly kind of rocked the Smash community in a way. That certainly was not exactly a great thing for the Smash community or those who are into the competitive fighting games as a whole. But one big one that, along with this one, has to do with the whole free Melee situation, because of the fact that there was a place where they do Melee competitions and all that stuff, considering a lot of Smash Brothers fans think Melee is the best entry in it, but due to COVID-19, they could not be able to meet together and all that stuff, so they had to do sort of a workaround to use online for folks to play Melee and all, and Nintendo eventually filed a cease and desist on this, saying that in terms of their argument of them protecting their IPs, henceforth this pushed the hashtag, free Melee, to even to the point where Nintendo had to cancel broadcasting a Splatoon competition. No reason was given, but many speculate the free Melee kind of thing. And while Nintendo is within their rights to protect their IPs and all, I feel as though, and I kind of agree with some arguments though, I feel as though they could have done a better job with this. They could have worked with these people to basically find a way to get Melee online, considering that a lot of health officials are advising people not to get together and all because of COVID-19. So I think that Nintendo could have handled this situation better, at least from my view, though. Same with the whole thing with the Joy-Con with Erica situation, though, in which these Joy-Con shells were being made to basically raise awareness of basically suicide and all that stuff, and Nintendo kind of came in and basically filed a cease and desist on the whole thing because of the word Joy-Con and all that stuff. Again, they're within their rights, it's their IP and all that stuff, but at the same time, this makes them look like the villains. I mean, if this is for what this is being built, what this person was trying to do and trying to raise awareness of, it came off pretty bad for Nintendo. Supposedly this was resolved and they removed the word Aircon or the Joy-Cons from it, though. But still, I really wish Nintendo had handled the situation better. It just makes them look like the villain, and that can be sort of a PR nightmare in a way. So yeah, I will say on the bad side, this was certainly not good for Nintendo, though. It certainly didn't impact the Nintendo Switch in any negative way, but it certainly, let's just say, it kind of sort of like Nintendo tends to be, let's just say, very protective of their IPs. Sometimes they're in the right, but sometimes, I will admit, they tend to go a bit overboard. And in the situation with the Melee and the Joy-Con or Aircon, I kind of feel to a certain extent, even though they may be in the right, they kind of went a little overboard with this one. it certainly was not a good year for GameStop, to be exact. Now, I've shopped at GameStop before. I really haven't had really major issues based on shopping there or anything like that. I can't speak for everyone. I'm sure there are those who had issues shopping at GameStop. But the way they've handled some of their situation, the way they handled the situation with the COVID-19 pandemic was, let's just say, even as much as I'm not blaming the employees at GameStop, though, I think the way they handled it was inexcusable. And this had to do earlier on when the COVID-19 pandemic was going on. At the time, they were several governors, including out here in California, were shutting down businesses that weren't essential in order to stop the spread of, or to try to prevent the spread of the coronavirus and all that stuff. GameStop tried to go out of their way to present themselves as they are a essential business, and well, let's just say that did not sit very well with everybody, including several claims of GameStop telling them to defy and to disobey the law, to them not having proper sanitation equipment. This led to, I think, some GameStop stores, and maybe some employees, I think I've heard stories about this, about them protesting it and closing it, to the point that GameStop decided to do a about face and start making some major changes, such as ensuring basically that their staff and all have the essential supplies necessary to ensure, in the safest way possible and follow, procedures and so forth. But the way GameStop handled this, especially when it got picked up by the mainstream press, though, was inexcusable. This was a dumb thing for the higher-ups and the CEOs to do, and that was just wrong on that part. They should never had done that or anything like that at all. And last but not least, though, it has to do with the PS5 and the Xbox Series S. While there's no doubt in my mind that this system certainly did very well, and Microsoft and Sony are actually happy about it, that's not to say everyone is very pleased with it. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that it was extremely hard to even find a PS5 and Xbox Series S. I was lucky to even get an Xbox Series S. In fact, I mean, if I were to compare it between how Sony handled the PS5 in terms of pre-orders and launch, I would say Microsoft did a better job and was more organized than Sony's handling of the PS5. Still, that doesn't mean it was easy to find the system or anything like that. But yeah, that wasn't exactly great, to be exact. It got bad because a lot of scalpers were basically using bots and buying up so many of them and then selling it off of eBay at outrageous prices. One even went as far as selling it for like a PS5 for like $32,000, and that really ticked off a lot of people, though, especially for those who try to shop at Walmart, where just when they have it in their cart, it suddenly disappears. I know I've ran into that problem before and all that. So it became very difficult for anybody to pick up a PS5 and all that stuff. The situation got so bad that we're hearing stories about how British politicians are now pushing to ban these kind of bots and crack down on some of these scalpers and all. Whether this picks up steam or not, who knows? But it certainly has put the whole scalper situation in the spotlight. And now we're starting to see like a lot of people are not buying these PS5s from these scalpers because they don't want to spend the money. I'm not going to spend $32,000 on a PS5 that costs like around $500 like that. And not everyone has $32,000 to blow or anything like that. For me, I'd rather use that money to save up to buy a new car than buy a PS5, for crying out loud. So we're starting to see the situation with the scalpers kind of backfired. Not to mention we're seeing some bragging about it, to even claiming it's for charitable causes, but not everyone's buying that. So yeah, getting a PS5 and Xbox Series S in 2020 was extremely difficult. Here's hoping with 2021 it will be much easier to find a PS5, or for those who are looking for an Xbox Series S and X. Hopefully 2021 is certainly better and all. Okay, this concludes my look back in gaming in 2020. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about gaming in 2020? Do you think gaming in 2020 was good? Do you think it was all right? Do you think it was just terrible, though? Were there controversial stories I may have missed and anything like that? Were there things that were just so bad that, or maybe there were things that were bad that I overlooked? Or do you think that 2020 was just, it was good for it, despite the situation with COVID-19 and so forth? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off on the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And if you like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You can do it through PayPal me or Patreon. Links will be in the description of this video. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, wish you all a good day then. Bye!